From Kenner, Star Wars Holiday Special Collection comes Mala, Itchy, Lumpy, and all 20 action figures, including the new Bloodlow, Zutmore, and more, each sold separately. And now, Akmina, Star Wars bartender, with her drink dispensing pitcher. Akmina is not yet available in stores, but you can get her free with 4 proofs of purchase from any Star Wars Holiday Special action figures. Details on specially marked packs at participating stores. Offer expires May 31st. Star Wars Holiday Special action figures, sold separately from Kenner.
It's the Star Wars Creature Cantina that you put together. Action figures each sold separately. You can make them move on revolving discs with the action lever. You can even make them fall.
Gotcha, Hammerhead. Got him. I told you not to follow me, Greedo. You owe us money, Han Solo. You're not going to collect this time. Wow, what a weird place.
Kenner's new Star Wars Creature Cantina. Action figures sold separately.
All right, folks, welcome to Star Wars Day. Hopefully you're having a good time hanging out. We have different shows that you've already been watching and not coming up. So listen, check out that playlist with me. How could I not have someone from the Tag Clan on? Like, I mean, literally his name is right out of the Star Wars lore. So you don't know that, he can tell that story as well. Baron, my friend, thanks for doing this, hanging out.
Well, thank you for having me. It's quite an honor to sit down and have a chat with you, Pops. So
yeah, and we can talk
we've
Star
chatted
Wars
many times.
And,
oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because your name, first off, let's do that. Let's just talk about the name, because your name is borrowed right out of the lore. So everybody kind of understands where that kind of came from.
Yeah. Well, when I started this YouTubing thing, it's like, going through all these names and trying to figure out what I wanted to call myself. And then I remembered one of my favorite villains from the Star Wars EU, well, back in the day, the comic book series. And it's from the original Marvel run. And this happened to be, well, at first, they're alluding to the brother of General Tag on the Death Star, the one that didn't get choked. And as it went along, they drew him, but they drew him like Marty. So as the evolution evolved, he became the cousin of General Tag. And he's the head of the famed Tag Co. If anybody within both universes of Star Wars, whether it be EU, and I refuse to call it Legends, or whether it is the Disney canon, you'll find Tag Co. come up. You'll even see him popping up in both universes. He was blinded. He kind of wore glasses just like Geordi did in Star Trek Next Generation, because Darth Vader blinded him. And he was not happy with Vader. So not only did he want to take out rebels, he wanted to take out Vader. He was training hard with the lightsaber so he could try to best him. And it was an interesting storyline. It was a storyline that led up to The Empire Strikes Back.
Right. That's good stuff. I love the fact that you borrowed your name from us. I think we met early on one of Mike's shows, and we started talking about that, and that led us to your love of obviously the Star Wars. We're similar enough in age we could talk about those experiences, but you had just so much cool stuff within arm's length. I think we went around the room back and forth. We hijacked Mike's show. Let's just be honest, for at least 30 or 40 minutes. I mean, Baron does it all the time. He's allowed to do it.
Yeah, I do it twice a week.
So let's do that. Let's rewind the clock back to 1970s. I don't know exactly if you're old enough. Did you see New Hope in theater? I think you're old enough to have, right?
Oh yeah. You mean Star Wars?
Yeah. The people at home, for us OGs, we talked about this last year because Troy Pacelli did a screening of Star Wars on the Thursday after my show, and it was the original version. I don't know how he has a copy, but he has a copy of the original stuff. There's no New Hope tag on it. Like, no, there it is, episode 4. So, well,
because was it like 20 years ago or so, they released the Star Wars remasters, but it was a limited time, and they also included the original one on another disc. Unfortunately, it wasn't remastered like the other stuff as in quality, but it was on DVD. But the reason why I say Star Wars is because just like you, that's all we knew it as until re-releases started before Empire Strikes Back. But I was about, I was born in 68, so 77. I was about eight years old. I was because I was September, this is May. And I did not want to see Star Wars, believe it or not. I hated science fiction and fantasy. It scared the bejesus out of me. And I wanted nothing to do with it. And my dad sat me down and had me watch the Making of Star Wars, that wonderful documentary when they would have what we say, basically an advert for an hour, but it didn't seem like an advert like so many other shows are now when they talk about behind the scenes. And it got me convinced to go see Star Wars, which opened my mind. So at that time, the theaters were still packed. I mean, I remember going into the Edina 1, 2, 3. I don't think it was the 4 yet. And the lobby was just loaded with people. And in that day, even with a hot hit like that in like a 3-theater cinema, they only had one dedicated to Star Wars and 2 for others. They didn't do like a lot of people where you walk into a multiplex of 16 and half of them are filled with the latest Mission Impossible movie. So we went in, sat down, crowded theater, and they had, of course, the Lucasfilm, 20th Century Fox Lucasfilm, and then boom, John Williams music, which of course sets you up a little bit. And it's like, oh my word, I gotta read now. I'm 8 years old. I don't want to read anything, but you read everything. It's like, okay, yeah. Sit back, and then the Rebel Cruiser came over. It's like, wow, boom, 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 and then the Star Destroyer, and I was lost. From that moment on. And I became a true Star Wars fanatic. Everything I wanted for birthdays, Christmas, whatever, I wanted to be Star Wars stuff, which is why I managed to get so much. I wasn't like other kids where you get something like this, something like that, something like that, which is fine for those. But I wanted Star Wars, and that's what I got. And yeah, that was my first experience with Star Wars in the theater back in the day. It wasn't on the opening day, obviously. By the way, just to let you know, May 20, the May 23rd or 25th. I mean, my apologies. Star Wars was only that week the #1 movie. It was bested the next week by Smokey and the Bandit. Then it came back with a vengeance.
Yep. Then it was on a run. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it took fans. It took Starlog. It's all these wonderful things back then that we don't have today. So,
what was because we've talked a lot about it through Star Wars Day and other shows and other interviews and conversations like this, because we didn't have the merchandising and things like that people think of, because Star Wars is so integrated in pretty much everything. So for me, obviously I was a comic book, trading cards. The music book, the album, was a huge deal for me, because that picture book that came with it, and then the little kid storybook, which I have a new copy I bought. Well, it's not new. It's I got a different. I would replace, not mine, my original one. By the way, what were some of the things for you that you were able to get a hold of first, long before action figures came along a year and a half later?
I mean, I don't remember much. I just remember one morning waking up, walking down into the kitchen, and there were the action figures. It was Chewbacca, R2, I think 3PO, and of course Luke. So it wasn't like the big four with that pack and all that stuff. And which blew me away, which opened, basically I didn't know much about merchandising back then, to quote the Schwartz master himself, Yogurt. So I didn't even think about any of that stuff. It's like this was all new territory. So I suppose really my first experience that there was more things in the Star Wars was just mind-blowing. I didn't even really know about the comic book. Actually, I think it was the giant editions of the Star Wars. They had 1 through 3 in one, and then 1 through 3 in a second one. We found that in a old Schneider Brothers, which no longer is around. And those things are so worn out because I kept on going over and over and over, and then I'd follow through with it with that album you're talking about. So I'd sit down with it and flip through, and it's of course kind of disappointed that it's cut down like it was, but still it was Star Wars. This is the best we had. We didn't have VHS. We didn't have any of this stuff.
Right.
So I just was imagining when I was in 3rd grade. I used to look out the window all the time because I was a bad student. I was really a bad student. And I daydream most of the time. And my teacher would sit back and say, yeah, he always looks out the window and daydreams. And I'm daydreaming that, a Darth's TIE fighter could land right there. The X-Wing could land right there. Can you imagine what would happen? I mean, it was all that stuff. And it was literally on my mind. And it actually was in third grade when I first saw the album. Someone brought that album to school to show off. It was like, wow. So, and it's, and that just kind of started going. It's like, you don't have to get me anything other than Star Wars basic attitude.
It's the new Star Wars Land Speeder.
Wow, looks like it's floating. And people are coming. It's up to Luke Skywalker and his land speeder to get us out.
Action figures each sold separately. The Land Speeder has a snap-open space hatch, and Star Wars action figures R2-D2 and C-3PO fit right in back.
Hurry, they're dancing. Activate spring glide wheels. The Force goes with us. Yeah.
Kenner's new Star Wars Land Speeder. Action figures each sold separately. It's the Star Wars X-Wing Aces target game.
Instruments check. Attack! Attack! TIE fighters, get him, Luke! Nice going, got it! Good shot, kid! You got him! Good score, kid! TIE's laying out! The Force move! Use the Force! I'm an ace! Don't get cocky, Ace. It's my turn!
The Star Wars X-Wing Aces target game. New from Kenner's Star Wars collection.
Oh, and I remember one time I asked when they went to a store, could you please get me something Star Wars related? And they came home with a knockoff Starlog, which I might have somewhere back here, but I don't know exactly where. I should have looked for that. And then they came home with a cracked magazine where Star Wars meets Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And that's back somewhere, so I don't know where. I have to find it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So so you mentioned, this was your thing. It just took over, and it was Star Wars all the time. How did you manage to sort of like hang on to everything? Like, how did that kind of navigate through? Because for many of us, it's like when you went off to college, so and so cleaned out the closet, or when you got married or whatever relationship, different. So how did you end up with like you have this stuff and you've had this stuff?
Well, I was lucky in the one category because my dad had stuff that his mother threw out, and he hated it. He hated that. And so he made sure to insist that nothing of mine gets thrown away. I just loved it. I tried to take, my toys are, worn from play, but they're not in horrible shape. So I tried to be as careful as possible with my toys. And then my first wife is a geek herself. She was more into Star Trek than Star Wars, and I like both. I'm not a snob when it comes around to it, because Star Wars opened the door into enjoying all the other fandoms, the original Battlestar, Buck Rogers, so on and so on, the Star Trek series, all the way through. So I had no problem there, and she knew it'd be instant death. And my current wife, she is not. You could say that she's, I tease her that she's a noob and she's throwing things at me. She's not big into science fiction, but she understands how precious this is, how precious my books are. She jokes about trying to sell them, but when you have someone who's understanding in your life and understands that this is part of you and you can't change a person. Plus, this is the second time around for both of us, so we've learned a lot of lessons. And her former husband was a geek, and again, a Star Wars geek. So that helped out. I mean, an understanding parents, understanding former wife, and an understanding current wife. And I even, I even let my kids play with my stuff when they were younger. But the stipulation is I didn't give any of the guns or anything like that. I didn't want those lost. But the stipulation was you be careful. You put them away when you're done. And if you break these violations, break these rules, violations, it gets put away. And they're pretty good. But then they started getting their own Star Wars toys as time went along. So my stepdaughter is an incredible Star Wars fan. So, and she doesn't like Disney.
Well, that's a different show for a different time.
Right. But it's amazing. My daughter doesn't like it. She that's the amazing thing about the magic of the OG Star Wars and the prequel, because she loves the prequel. She loves the Clone Wars. She loves all that. And she started loving the new stuff. but as she got older and mature, she could see what the difference was between it. So this isn't an attack. This is an attack. But she could see what the difference is at her young of age. And other than Ahsoka, she loves the character Ahsoka. Boom. What happened? She went to the OG. And it's like, okay, hey, no problem. No problem at all. Welcome to the club. So that's the magic that the OG has.
Yeah, the timelessness of that original trilogy, it's just remarkable. And what it just changes the landscape of everything. It's in every aspect of our life and culture, obviously. So let's just dig in. Let's just dig in. What can he reach for first? What can he show us off first? Make sure, folks, by the way, check out. I'll put a link to not only Baron's channel and information there. I'll also put it at Pacific 414 because he's one of the co-hosts over on Mike's shows, things like that. So you'll be able to connect accordingly. So.
Remember a certain lady who's going to get you that works for a certain company that's going to get you, and that certain lady in that certain company is going to get you, right? And she said there was nothing to go on, no materials to go on, no whatever. This is the very first one right there. There we go. How's the glare? There we go. This came out 83, 84, right? I got two of these because one was written through. The Guide to Star Wars Universe, and this included everything from of course, the movies, the radio plays, the books, they don't have the Lando Calrissian in because Lando Calrissian series came out about 83, so it was not in time for that. But they have the original Han Solo series in there by I hate when I get mental blocks, but great, he also did the audio plays. But none of the comics. But so this was our guide. There were some errors because this is back in the day when things are still meshing. It's not, it's starting to come together, you might say. And of course, I got the other books. I got the encyclopedia. I got the 3-cent encyclopedia. I got the more advanced version of this that was done. So we got that.
Do you have a Star Wars novelization? The very first movie one? Do you have
Yeah.
No.
Actually, I got two.
Is it the gold one?
No.
Well,
might have a paperback one that's
what I meant.
Well beaten up. Yeah.
I
think I might have one, but it's well beaten up. I kind of got it from a secondhand type.
Well, you'll have to send me a picture if you can, because that was the one that Little Pops had. That's what Little Pops got. And part of the reason that I started at least liking to read more, I should say that, because I didn't hate reading, because I learned to read out of comic books. But when it become like vocabulary, like how can I become, I had a grandmother who just said, here's the dictionary, just look it up. It's okay. She was always encouraging. She was like, what does this mean? It's fine. Here, look it up. It's she just taught me how to use the dictionary. And then it was like, okay, you can look up whatever you want to look up. There was no rule. And that little gold novelization, I tore it up from the floor up, man. I reread that thing over and over and over and over again. Yeah. Couldn't believe it. So.
But I do have the book club versions of that, the hardbacks, which I like. I know, because in many ways I prefer hardback over paperbacks, but I'll take it anyway, And we go with what we can get, just like Splinter in Mind's Eye. I got that one, but it's the paperback, not the paperback, but the book club edition.
Gotcha.
So the hardcover. So that makes me happy, but I got to see if I can go find that one because, I know it's been a year, but we're still unpacking.
What is next, my friend? What is next that you want?
Well, again, going to the category, we have nothing to go on. Here is the making. I actually got 2 copies. This one's my more beat up copy, but I got a better one that's in plastic and back. The journal, the making of the Empire Strikes Back, which is absolutely. And then, of course, needless to say, a few years later, you had the making of Return of the Jedi. Boom. Let's get that over a little bit. So
they were so clever because I don't think it was common practice at that point for that making and behind the scenes stuff to be as front and center as it was. And I think that that's part of what the genius of George was. It's like we had to figure out a way, and he was all about like, I'm already a fan. I just want to connect to more people that are like me. Totally got that. Hence the reason we had comic books and stuff like that, because he's like, it was free marketing material. I like comic books. They'll like comic books. Let's just give it a comic book and we'll give it a, So it's like, that's the approach. So doing these making of things, I think were just like you said, I was so immersed in just the lore and the canon of it all. You just loved it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, all of them that they came up for, like the Mark Hamill had that one, I believe, was it for PPS? I can't remember, but he had I did one for Return to the Jedi, I think, and I can't remember if they did one for Empire Strikes Back or not. But of course, the most famous one is the first one for Star Wars that I think it helped grab people more. And yeah, I mean, the making of there, but up until then was a bit of a niche thing. There was I got a books, the basically like the art books of Star Wars, which where did I put it? I got it somewhere, but I'll grab it in just a moment. It was a niche thing for Citizen King. This is more. It was more for this stuff was more for people who were deep into art, cinema history, and learning and a lot of that stuff. It wasn't necessarily the common person's grab onto, but George Lucas made it so with Star Wars. More interest became what made this movie. Everything's so spectacular about it. What made this movie, and that helped out a lot. Oh. Now I know. I don't know if I got it nearby to grab or not, but there was the one from Scholastic, and they had a books where they went through and detailed inspirations and such, detailing Star Wars. I saw it at a book fair at my school, and it's like, I want that. And needless to say, I got it because, again, what did I ask for? Star Wars.
It was the kind of thing where the curtain could be pulled back and it didn't make the disbelief go away.
Mm-hmm.
It actually made us want to learn more. So like when you saw the stop motion for the Tauntauns and how the AT-ATs were done, just made you want to appreciate more stop motion. You would have some friend somewhere who was like, well, wait, if you like stop motion, have you ever seen blah, blah, blah? You were down that rabbit hole. And then it was, when we got to see the blue screen, not green screen, blue screen.
Yep, blue
of
screen.
The original speeder bike sequences, right? When you're watching that sequence and how they would speed it up and how they would do it, you're like, wow. You know what I mean? Because just between Star Wars and Jedi, how far and how fast things had happened for them was
right.
I think it sucked us in. We become, I don't want to say we were part of the family, but you felt the fandom felt part of the journey. And I think that's what this all did so well, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what helped was you had Star Trek that had that ravenous fan base. They started having these conventions. People didn't think they're going to be big back in like 72, 73, but boom, out of nowhere these people came. And then, of course, now here comes the Star Wars that pours more gasoline on that fire. And, all of a sudden there's conventions everywhere. There's get-togethers, the fan clubs, the meetups, all that stuff expanded even more. Hi, Mouse. And he demands his screen time.
That's it.
He does.
Yeah.
He's my partner.
We got to have all the appearances we can. We'll take it.
Right.
That's great.
And that's fantastic that you had that. I mean, it's just like that picture of George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry shaking hands together on stage. One leads to another. And they recognize that. And that's a perfect sign that we can love all sorts of science fiction. And what was your gateway to it? What was that dime bag? You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, yeah, we got, some were Star Trek, some were Star Wars.
Yep. All right, what else you got, buddy? Let's keep going. That's great stuff.
Oh, let's keep going. Well, I did talk about it, so why not? The art of Star Wars, of course. This is my second copy. My first copy is a paperback on the shelf, but I brought down the hardback because, again, like I said, I like the hardbacks. And these are wonderful because of all the wonderful art behind the scenes, even like the storyboarding, these were beautiful. Yep. And something? I just had something that just dropped out of this. I didn't even know that's in here. But yeah. This is a promotion piece for the theaters on Star Wars. Forgot I had this.
There it
telling
is. Yep.
everything there was, explaining, and trying to approach the piece to get everybody in there. The little adverts you could put in the newspapers. Can you believe that they used to have this stuff in newspapers advertising films?
It would
And
look
all
just
that.
like that, pretty much. It would look just like that.
Yeah.
It'd be like the big picture, the logo, and then in the bottom right, where all that
Mhm.
text, it'd be all this like film when it shows and airs and kind of type stuff. Yeah, that was how we would survive in print, for sure.
And you know what? That was an extra surprise that we had out there, and I don't think there's many of those around. So I mean, I don't collect for money. I don't. I collect it for love. So many of the stuff I have, I don't know what the value is. For me, it's priceless because I don't want to get rid of it, and that's going to be up to whoever after me when I go to the become one with the Force, as they say. For my next generation to decide what they want to do, and I'm sure there'll be an interesting fight over it. That's all I got to say. Let's go back to comics we're talking about. And, well, of course, back in the day, we didn't have, quote unquote, graphic novels, right? Which were basically compiling issues of comics together. But we had these.
Yep.
So not only can you get the 4 copies, copy issue of the Return of the Jedi, you can get this pocket version. As you can see, it's got shelfware because why? You read it, and nice living color.
I definitely don't think people have seen those before, for sure. That's definitely a very uncommon thing for folks to see.
Right. So before that, let me get there. Here's another one. And these were stories that we didn't see before.
These are the
I think pretty much the ones that were in the UK that they put out here for special. So it's nice to see these stories as something we've never seen before. And then finally, they had to do a second one. And I think this one helped finish out the series that was in Pizzazz magazine that was kind of a youth-orientated people-like thing for Marvel Comics. And then they had a little, insert story of Star Wars to supplement it. And the magazine got canceled before the story was done, so they put it here. But unfortunately, sadly, it doesn't really bother me. But those are in black and white. And it's these are great. And this is this story right here is complete. Maybe it's this one that had that finished off the Pizzazz series. I don't know. But this has like 3 stories and this has 1. So I mean, those what we lived on back in the day that we have. But
oh man,
I gotta get some of these framed and hung up. But I mean, these are so legendary. These are the things that these paintings are the ones that help get Star Wars to go. And of course, a lot of people say, so many people, but Alan Ladd Jr. deserves a lot of props for giving us Star Wars because he stood up and fought for it at 20th Century Fox. And and of course, there's several paintings in there and such. And I gotta get those. All hung up. You know what I mean? You like music? I like music. And so I got, of course, this trilogy special set. And this was even before the special editions came out. So these are kind of core, including a track with samples not used, such like that. And what's so nice about it, these people were so kind to include a little book in there.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is why you go for hard media, folks. You can enjoy this stuff. You can enjoy getting books like this. You can enjoy seeing some artwork they never had seen before because they're piecemealed out across a lot of the media. So I got that there. Put this by Duchess the Doxy of Death.
It was so great to be able to navigate through that evolution too. Like I know as things came out again with like the special edition re-releases and things like that ahead of that, there'd be like new releases of records, or now it's going to be on CD, or now it's going to be whatever. And it was like it was just always so fun to revisit that kind of stuff. Speak a little bit to that lull for you because I've talked about it briefly, but it seems like a good spot to kind of spin our wheels for a second because Return of the Jedi starts fizzling out. So you're looking at like 84, 85. They start trying their hand on all sorts of things that are not they don't feel Star Wars at all, right? 'Cause I'm going to talk a little bit about droids and Ewoks, the failed animation shows, and then of course the Kenner line of the droids. They only did like the 12 or 13 figures, and then that didn't go. They ended up, the was it Brazil? I don't know if South America, but whatever that, I think it was Brazil, right? Just all those just get cleaned out, just get rid of all that. So it's like we get into this lull, and then it's like it took until the 90s before George did the the black box, the gold box. We start to get to the different re-releases and stuff. What was that lull like for you? Because to me, I never ever lost the love for it. It just felt like everything else was like there was just so much other good stuff. It didn't really mean I didn't like Star Wars. It just meant there was all this other stuff that just kind of like took all the oxygen out of the room for most people.
Right. I mean, when that lull happened, the lull happened about 85, right? And I said that's happening. There's a little bit of Star Wars fatigue here that happened. With everybody, it seemed like, because it was, it just was. He imagined that 3 films in 6 years, comic books, in the merchandise, it wasn't that much that was being thrown at us, but by 85, we're tired. Now, I think the most Star Wars feeling of all that came out was not the Ewok series, definitely not, or the Ewok movies, definitely not, our TV show. But Droids, I thought, was at least closer to the feel of Star Wars. If a bit silly with the humor, but obviously it's aimed at a younger crowd. And I enjoyed it, and I got the DVD when it came out. Unfortunately, there was just a couple stories that they compressed the 4 parts into one movie, and the other side 4 parts into one movie. Obviously, not covering the entire series. I wish they would. But yeah, I mean, about that time, I really started getting into Star Trek. That is actually when the that dime bag came along. It was basically seeing Wrath of Khan. I saw Star Trek motion picture, the movie, and I loved all of it until they got to the cloud, and they're going to the cloud. I'm going, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Because it's just, how long can you sit on a screen and just see stuff, going by for about 20 minutes? It's like, I'm exaggerating, but that's what it felt like. But Wrath of Khan came in, really sucked me in. I became heavily involved with Star Trek fan clubs. I was the president of our local international, Starfleet. I even went to the quote unquote, the higher ups. I became part of the Corps of Engineers of Starfleet. I was also the regional coordinator, which overlooks several clubs in the quote unquote region of so many states. So I was really heavily in that. So that kept, of course, again, science fiction. That is just like, okay, I'll go this direction because I really, really like it. I like the people I'm around. And I say the thing that helped started really revitalizing my love for Star Wars. I mean, not that it was gone, but wanting to jump headfirst into Star Wars was actually 1987, the 10th anniversary, and that's when you had West End Games come out with the role-playing game, which I have back there. And I went to one of the parties with one of the guys from that Starfleet, right? It was probably New Year's Eve or something, I can't remember. And we're saying, hey, you guys want to play Star Wars? It's like, what? Yeah, we got this role-playing game. Okay. And I fell in love with it. And it was like, hey, I am living in the world of Star Wars. I'm not any of the heroes. I'm my own person. Obviously, a template out there because, you needed something quick. And it just started opening doors. And then you had that West End Games coming out with supplements. You had the Empire source book, the Rebel source book, delving into it, which still even influences into the House of the Mouse, using elements of that in their canon. And of course, the Galaxy guides that really delved into characters, giving us names of what some of these characters are and what species they were. Greedo, he's a Rhodian. Oh, okay, that's interesting. The Hammerhead has actually a name, and he's an Illithid, or can't remember. I can't pronounce that word. It's like, why do you come up with some of these hard names? And they go in the backstory of course, General Tag and Admiral Mati, and they did that for all 3 films, and it was like, boy, it's opened up even more of a rich history of the Star Wars universe. And, then you have How to Be a Tramp Freighter in Star Wars. Here's one about Bespin and Yavin, if you want to involve there. And it just exploded even more, Mos Eisley and being a bounty hunter. It's like, whoa, this is taking us places we have never been to before. So I think that imagination, in fact, when Tim Zahn did his trilogy, the Heirs of the Empire or Thrawn trilogy, whatever you want to call it, they sent him all this material that they had up to that time, which kind of infuriated him.
I'm glad you transitioned there, because that's what I was going to ask you next, because it seemed like that was my stepping stone, was the Thrawn trilogy. So
right.
Did he? Yeah. So did he? How did he take hold of what the RPG people had created or not created, or how did that kind of work?
At first, and he even admits it, he was miffed that they sent this stuff to him, but a little bit insulted. But then he sat down and started reading it, and he goes, "My word, these guys have done so much work for me in these books," that he incorporated these books into the Thrawn trilogy. And was not afraid to do that. And so you had the interdictor that was introduced in the Empire source book. That was into the book. The skip sprays, the skip sprays were introduced in. Various other elements that were brought back. And the Z95 Headhunter, which was in the Han Solo series in the 70s, was reintroduced into Star Wars because of that, because it was in the games material. And so this was his encyclopedia. This was his notes, and they were handed to him, and he loved it. And he began to contribute to West End games, whether short stories or expanding stuff, or when they were doing their basically supplements to those books, where you could garner even more knowledge about what was going on in his universe. But we can't forget at the same time that Dark Horse got their license.
I was going to ask you what led to the licensing to get Dark Horse. Because I can just see George, because George has been pretty transparent about his thought processes of what he likes and what he's into. It's like the RPG. Let these people keep expanding it. These are the rules, though. You got to play in the rules. Right. And then Zahn gets the rules. He plays in the rules. Okay, well, what about comic books? And we didn't really go back to comic books, and it was hard to get Marvel to do it the first time, so they went to Dark Horse the second time, and you know me, I was there day one, Wednesdays, every one of those drops. And actually, you won't be able to tell, there's a graded copy of my Dark Empire #1 on the wall, graded 9.8. That's my copy. That's not one I bought at 9.8. That's not one I bought years later. No, that's one of the ones, because I bought multiple copies, to be perfectly transparent, folks. I gave one of my other copies, the one that didn't get graded. That was went to my new son-in-law, so he has the other. The other of the two originals that I still had to this point in my life.
Well, congratulations on both parts, that you have a new son-in-law and that he likes Star Wars enough that that you hand him a Dark Empire and he appreciates it.
What was that gap for me? Help me go. Let's get everybody on board. So we have RPG and Zahn, and now the Dark Horse licensing piece, and how that kind of gets into that stuff.
Well, I do want to take one step back just slightly.
Yeah.
This was not the first attempt to do a Star Wars comic since the Marvel series. A company called Blackthorn, I think it's Blackthorn, came out. They had 3 issues they came out with. They were black and white, but 3D comics. And I know the one story evolved around an alien, Mos Eisley, everything going, and then Luke grants him the old Lars a homestead to live on, and he grows. And I can't remember exactly what the other ones, but it didn't grab. I can't remember exactly what year, but it was, of course, before Dark Empire. Similar to a long way, because, as you know, George loves comics and he loves novels, and they okayed it. And more importantly, Lucasfilm wanted these two to work in conjunction to somehow, make sure that these mesh with each other. And the author of Dark Empire, reached out to Timothy Zahn, blah, blah. And Timothy Zahn does not like Dark Empire. He does not appreciate it at all. So he was not very willing to help. So they placed Dark Empire. I'm trying to remember. It was post Thrawn trilogy.
Correct.
And so they went their own direction. And funny enough, between the two series, the Thrawn and the Dark Horse, George Lucas likes the Dark Empire better. It fit more into his worldview of Star Wars. And you can see that when you go back to the prequel series, because what are they doing in there? What is Palpatine doing? And of course, have you heard about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis? Just want to know if you heard that or not. But it was about eternal life.
Mm-hmm.
And here in Dark Empire, you're seeing that with the Emperor's Return.
And the cloning and stuff that he is well on its way. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you say that too, because I don't know when I heard George speak about that, but I almost felt like a sigh of relief as a fan, because I knew about Zahn, but I didn't know how George felt. And I know I always liked Dark Empire more, but I always felt like I was biased because I always liked comic books more. So I didn't really put like a lot of weight in it. But whenever that came out, I thought, oh, like he validated me. He validated my. It felt like a natural sequel, whereas Heir to the Empire, you had a lot more of things that felt there was no setup for. But again, I'm not an RPG guy, so a lot of stuff could have come from there, and I didn't know. Like Luke going into the hyper sleep mode, where he's like trapped in the X-wing and he's just floating in space, and he goes into a hyper sleep mode, and like, where did that come from? It didn't bother me to the point where it took me out of the thing. I just didn't know where it come from. So anyway, I won't take too much more of our time with this, but I'm so glad that we were able to at least get through some of that time frame to get people into the 90s, because I think that's when things started to really roll again, and that's when you start getting to a new rollout with the films, a new rollout with action figures, all the Power of the Force figure, all that kind of stuff. So that's when it kind of goes nuts. But let's do more show and tell, because we don't have Baron for too long, so we gotta make sure we get through some of this. Baron has so much stuff in the background, folks. I don't know what show we were doing. At one point I asked him on air, live on the air, stop the show. I says, is that an original Death Star game box behind? He's like, yes, it is. And I'm like, oh yeah.
I think with the Hoth one, I got my daughter gave me the redone that they did with the figure in there of Luke in the Hoth gear. They also gave me the Death Star one because it has Tarkin in it, because Tarkin is one of my favorites out there. I mean, in Star Wars, he was the bad guy. But I remember I was sick one time, and my parents came home with this.
They got the remote control R2.
Right. The thing I'm irritated the most about is everything's there, but I don't know where the heck the antenna happened. I'm going to have to search for if anybody has that antenna. But yeah, I mean, I had this in the box. I keep it in the box and then bring it out. But I kept on bringing it in and out of the box so much, the box literally disintegrated. But yeah, this was special. You get the boops and the bops and all that stuff. So I thought I'd bring up something that I don't think many people do have on it.
What year? I was gonna say, what year did that come out? Because obviously the main stuff came out in '78. So I wonder if that was part of that first group, or is that part of the next couple waves?
I think with the second wave when it came out, that's when they introduced the Cantina aliens and those with that second wave, the X-wing Luke and such, and then you had this. And don't get me started on that. In one of these drawers, I have virtually every one of those catalogs that came with it, because I'd save them and read them over and dream. I want that. I want that. I want that. So, I mean, I think I even still have the one that was original. When you got like the X-wing or the
I got to get in touch with your heirs just in case they want to get rid of a couple of those, because I won't be able to afford most of these things, but I would love to have one of those. I've thought about trying to buy and track down some of those catalogs, but I always worry about like the condition and things like that. And a lot of people sell them. They'll charge you like $25, and it's actually just the page. It's just the ad. It's not the actual catalog. And I'm like, I mean, that's not the experience. The experience is the catalog. So we did a whole show on the catalog last year.
Yeah. Now that we're talking, I did pollute it with having this Battlestar Galactica thing in here. Let me take a look through here, because you know something?
It was such a big deal to see catalog.
You want it?
Oh, wow. Look at that. That's the little guys. Look how cool he is. Man, so cool. I love those red Royal Guards were some of my
Oh, I
favorites.
do.
And that little book opened, and I was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, we were getting a little old because you were older than me, a couple years older than me, but I was
Right.
still such an uber nerd for Star Wars stuff at this point. The Max.
Well, I'm serious though. You want this?
Oh yeah, we can talk off camera for sure. Absolutely,
Yeah,
we'll figure
definitely.
something out. We can tit for tat something. There got to be something that I have that you might want. I got some trading cards. I know you. I know there's got to be some trading cards that you're missing.
Cards.
Got to be one or two that you're missing.
Oh,
I probably can hook you.
is this it? Is this it? Is this the very? I have to open it up.
That was an original Jedi one for sure.
Yeah, this is an original one.
Wow.
And yeah, it's in great shape for all the times I've gone through it. I mean, you know, they were introducing the 12-inch figures.
Those are 12-inch, yeah.
Yep. They had the Vans and what's else is down
there?
there?
The Vans.
Yeah, and
you know what I'll do is I will play, folks. I will take a quick moment pause. I will play for you the Van commercial right now.
I'm Darth Vader. I'll beat you to the finish. I've got Luke, R2-D2, Chewbacca, and all the good guys. I've got the Force. I've got the Force.
It's the blazing power of the new Star Wars SSP van set with features like headers, mag wheels, custom grills, and space-age graphics.
Yeah! The good guys finish first. Till next time.
The Star Wars SSP van set by Kenner comes with everything here. Each van also sold separately.
Fantastic.
I have about 100 of the original commercials.
Ooh, you're far better man than me.
Oh, I have a stockpile.
Yeah, there you go. That's and what's great about this, they gave you the heights of each one of the figures in there.
Yep, that's how you know it's an original one. They stopped doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
And where is it? Where is it? Where are you? Where are you? Oh yeah, and here's the more updated one with the new figures. You know, basically, it was a little section they added in there.
They start showing you the line of what's coming next.
Mm-hmm.
The different, the Sandcrawler. Oh, I always wanted a Sandcrawler.
Yeah, me too. And look at those die-cast ones. That's not how they look. I know. I got it right there on my shelf behind me. But and I'm glad they didn't come out looking like that. Oh my word! You know, even when they were still doing it for episode 1.
Mm-hmm. We trim around that.
Okay, remember when they respected Star Wars and the development of it, and they came out with the concept, and there's the Ralph McQuarrie one that looks like the one they used in The Force Awakens.
Yeah, I forgot all about that line. Those were so cool.
They were, and I sadly only got 2 of them, but there's the other one where you have basically it looks like the front of the Y-wing, and of course then you have that. I mean, those are absolutely great.
You know, the thing that they've lost, and before you get too far from this, and this is closest you're going to get to a complaint from me today, and I'm sorry, folks, I will not derail, I promise, is George was so adamant in those interviews where he was talking about Phantom Menace with people that were trying to be critical or whatever, and he's like, no, I needed it to feel like it was a through line to where we ended up, right? So we needed to see the progression of technology, the way the vehicles would look. You needed to see things that would be cleaner because they're going to be dirty, and the way that it will evolve. And I feel like that's one of the elements that has gotten lost. I don't want to blame just Disney. I think it's also about the move to make something so they can get royalties, and I got to create something on my own or whatever. And I'm like, but if it doesn't fit the feel, I'm rereading the first of the Disney comic books that came out. So by the time you've seen this, folks, you may have already seen my video where I'll talk about those comics, and they take place in between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. And I don't dislike them. They're kind of the same thing with like Shadows of the Empire. I feel like it's all okay. It's not my favorite thing. There's moments that I'm like, you know, because you're seeing like Vader interact with Luke again, or Vader interact with Leia. You're seeing things that takes away from what made the movies feel very much like a mystique. And you're having them interact a whole bunch more times. Would have given Vader it makes Vader seem a lot more incompetent to me, because like he had a lot more opportunities to kill Luke or kill Leia so that's how I feel. Like I know that's a silly thing to put in the story.
Well,
but I feel like there's a lot of ships and things. But my point was, there's a lot of ships and things they just don't fit. Because I'm like, if that ship kind of existed, we would see one in one of the other two movies, or if this ship existed, we would see one in one of the other two movies, things like that. So that's kind of where I was getting at, because those concept things that you're showing off just makes me realize that principle that drove the franchise at its core.
Right. And again, I'm not meaning to come out here and do a complaint fest on that, but I tried reading even that first series, and I was immediately turned off the moment Luke faced Vader, face to face. And I just did this because one of the great things about the original run of Star Wars with Marvel is they had a decree coming from on top that you don't involve the Empire or Darth Vader because we don't know which direction we're going to go with, which forced them to not only come up with some great villains, but to expand this universe even larger. So you have the first EU villain, and that was Crimson Jack, as he gets Han Solo. Then you had Queeg. I think it's supposed to be like Queeg. That's on the water world. And, here Luke is, that's from a desert world. He's now on a water world. And, of course, eventually Vader did come in, but he's still in the shadows. Then you got Valance, the bounty hunter. Probably the one bounty hunter is more, bad than Boba Fett. And because we didn't have Boba Fett. But they brought him in, so Boba Fett's not being overused. And, of course, you had Gray Shade of the Wheel. Oh, I love the Wheel. And, of course, Baron Orman Tag. So you look through that and what they were forced into. Darth Vader and the Empire didn't start showing up until almost issue 25 of the Star Wars series. And that what made Star Wars even better is they had to get the old brain pan going, their imagination going, thoughts and ideas, of course, approval from Lucasfilm. And that's why I hold that Marvel series, even though a lot of people wanted to track it. But I think that earlier, before The Empire Strikes Back, is truly a golden age of Star Wars comics. Even with Jackson, the green 6-foot-tall meat-eating rabbit. I love Jackson.
So I can agree and disagree. So here's what I'm going to say. I agree with you. And I totally know Archie Goodwin was very handcuffed on what he could write about, what he could actually do. He created Jackson, which most people did not like. I had mixed feelings. Things have grown on me. Things at the time didn't work, but I'm with you. I love the fact that it forced the creativity because they weren't allowed to get into the backstory of Luke and Leia and Vader because he didn't want anything to be revealed. He didn't quite know how certain things were going to work out. They definitely weren't allowed to talk about things like Clone Wars and stuff like that. But I think what I did like about this was I felt like, and this is Disney Marvel. This is 2015. So this is them doing the first Star Wars series and the Vader series, and they do intertwine together. They overlap with one another. And it takes place between them. I think most of the time it felt like it could have happened and it could have worked. Anytime I feel like it gets too negative, they do something positive that usually fixes it. But I do agree it's too much about trying to make new things, like shoehorning these new characters in because they want their royalties and their name, instead of capitalizing on the fact that there was such a rich group of characters that they could have used and would have pulled in and would have made more sense. So I can kind of agree and disagree. So I'm not quite far enough. But I want to do a review on that because I want to give it a fair. Cause I will say it's not the worst Star Wars stuff out there, and if you were to find it cheap, because I think you probably can find it cheap, it's not the worst thing in the world to read. But let's get back to some more show and tell from Baron stuff. Lord knows. We're not going to be able to. We're going to have. Obviously, I'm hoping that we can do Star Wars Day regularly, and more people will do Star Wars Day type content like this, and do more show and tells with Baron. So reach out to someone like Baron, and just for half hour to hour or 6 hours, depending on who you talk to, just go through stuff and show off stuff. Because I think this is. Because you know what? People have never seen that concept vehicle ship that you just showed, right? People have forgotten about the little mini catalogs that were our little teases on what to buy. So I think that's the beauty of a day like this is we can take a pause and talk about all these positive things and cool things and things like that. So what else you got?
And what's neat is you can see it in the sketchbooks that they came out with. So you open it up and you see the sketchbooks and those concept designs in there. And not only that, you got the Juggernaut, the original concept for the AT-AT that you saw in Revenge of the Sith.
Yep.
So you're sitting there going, "Oh, I've seen this in the sketchbook. I've seen it in the role playing game. Now I'm seeing it for real."
So good.
Okay, so the original concept for, and I know this is newer stuff here.
That's
The
okay.
Black Series.
We're not opposed to showing off new stuff too. I mean, listen,
But-
today is not a day to hate on the Mouse House and whatever. And there have been good things.
oh.
Maybe I should do that too. Maybe I should grab a couple new Mouse House type things and I'll show you, and maybe we'll see what you think.
Yeah,
I love the fact that it's sort of a prototype homage to Boba Fett. I love it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and the only reason why I clarify that, this is, a modern one, but it's still classic Star Wars. And not only that, this is what Boba Fett was originally going to look like. This was the concept for him. And so, when I saw it, it was exclusive. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was Walgreens or whatever. I need to say, I had to have it. So I got that. But the follow through, one of my favorite characters, even though he has very limited screen time, but he's a badass, played by, I'm sorry if I said that. Forgive me for saying
You're
that.
all right.
From The Empire Strikes Back, played by the great Julian Glover, who was in Doctor Who, obviously Star Wars, the George R.R. Martin series, General Veers. And I love this one. This, as you can see from the sticker, is. But what I love about this is you can put them take the hat off and put the armor on, like you saw him in the AT-AT. And yes, it's AT-AT, people. I don't mind if you say AT-AT, but except it's also AT-AT. And or you can have him as the officer when he goes and talks with Vader. So
I'm spinning my wheels on the AT-AT versus AT-AT thing, because I think because even with Return of the Jedi and there is an AT-ST, for some reason we didn't stop calling it the AT-AT. I know you people that point that out is you're making a valid point, but this man is like myself. He still calls them an AT-AT. If you're a prequel baby, I know they were. It depends on who your parents were. Most people have already switched over to AT-AT, unless you're like me. And my boys still say AT-AT, but we get it.
Yeah, that's how we were taught to say it, because when you had the commercial for them, and I do have that toy in my closet, they were saying AT-AT, and it's like, okay, fine, that's how it is, and it makes sense that we called AT-AT by the troops, just like they like to, as you went along, and as they have nicknames, or they use something like squints and eyeballs for TIE fighters and TIE interceptors and various stuff like that. And maybe I'll take this one out of the bag so it doesn't have glare. Remember a while back, maybe about 15, 16 years ago, some college or some university somewheres were making a big deal because it was obviously a slow news day, so the press was jumping on it, that they found a copy of the original script for Star Wars. And I don't think they mean an actual original one, but a copy of it, what Star Wars: The Adventures of a Star Killer was. I saw that and go, what are you talking about? I've had this for years. Years.
And he has a Brad. And he has like a brass Brad holding it on. I mean, that's the OG move right there. That's exactly how those things were made. And they would put the only other variation of that, you would have 3 holes with 3 brads.
Right.
So they'd pass them out like that, and then people could decide they want to put them in binders or not. And that's it. That's so cool. That's cool. I don't
and of course,
think I've seen
this
that
is
in
what
years.
they made. Right. And this is the one they turned into that comic book series, the alternate one from. But I couldn't find it for this show, but I do have it. I have the original treatment to Star Wars, not a script, but and where the droids are the senators. Right. And leading up to it, and of course, this is a change where you actually get the droids, but it's still the Ralph McQuarrie art stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
And of course, then all you have to do is get the art of Star Wars. You got the script. Art of Empire, you didn't, but they came out with the notebook that did, and the planning stuff, the artwork. Then of course, Return of the Jedi came out with the script. The Art of Star, the episode 1 didn't. They have a script book, and then of course 2 did, and then 3 on a second release in paperback, they put the script in there in that one. So it's like it's not hard. Plus, they came out the script books for them. I don't know where I got those exactly. For all the way through IE. So those are easy to get a hold of. But yeah, you had to go to conventions. And what happened was, I'm sure Dewey Gernblatz or Bob Berditzman or Gurn somebody came down, went to a convention, saw one of these, and then brought it in and go, hey, look, we can sit back and say we got this rare thing. Yeah. Heard ya.
Well, speaking of not rare things, some Disney things were cool to me. So, like yourself, this is the fearless, spontaneous Han Solo limited edition Disney pin.
Yeah.
It's a Disney pin.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
But it's super cool. It's real heavy. It's thick. I don't know. I'd have to take it off to see how many there were. It's 500 or 600 of them were made. It's not very many.
Yeah.
And then I got doodads because obviously I love Boba Fett. So they started making like luggage tags, and they made these are really heavy keychains, and they're mass produced in China. This one's 2018. I don't see the date on that other one, but they got to be new Star Wars. They're not old. They're not vintage.
Right.
And it becomes things
like that.
Yeah. The Forest pin packs. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not anti-Disney. If you take a look, fully anti-Disney, there's elements of Disney that I like, but I do not consider canon. It's the EU for me, all or nothing. But I mean, when they came out with Gift Baby, which was the original design for the Star Destroyer, the Cantwell class, I had to get this because this is pure, from early designs, what the Star Destroyer was going to look like. And they come back and use it again. This was brilliant to use this. I wish it had more screen time in Solo, but of course, Andor, you see more of it. So, I mean, not all Disney Star Wars is garbage. And I just want to make sure people know that.
Yeah, no, like I said, I didn't want, even if I were to find a vintage type of tag for my luggage or a keychain, I wouldn't want to use it because it's a vintage one. It'd be harder to replace it. Whatever. Whereas with this, it makes something that's mass produced, whatever, and I can enjoy it and have some of that kind of stuff. So that's been some
right.
All right. Before we go, I just want to, because we're getting close to our cutoff time here. We're about an hour or so going here. I want to, we've got to have time for some more commercials, right, folks? Yeah, right. I get just about feedback on commercials and teases and stuff, Baron, last year than I did on actual content. I said I should have just run an hour of just the commercials that I've stockpiled. The problem with a lot of them, though, folks, as I've said before, is some of them do have copyright issues, so I have to modify them. I can't play them in their original form. I have to either take the music out, or I have to trim them. So let's say it's 30 seconds. I got to make it more like a 18-second ad by taking pieces of it out to keep the tone of it. But for some reason, some of them get flagged.
It's a perfect time if you have the ad one to put out there, just to prove our point.
Oh, that's a good point. We should try to find the ad one. We can note that too. Yeah.
It's new AT-AT, the all-terrain armored transport from Kenner. Batteries not included, action figures each sold separately. You can make AT-AT walk. Its legs are big enough to crush obstacles. You can move AT-AT's head and pretend to scan for rebels. AT-AT has a cockpit for Imperial Commander and AT-AT driver, and laser machine guns. When you push a button to fire the laser cannons, you activate battle lights and sounds. There's even a troop compartment. New AT-AT from Kenner's Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection.
Everybody's heading for Woolworth and Woolco to get set for Halloween. There's Star Wars costumes like Darth Vader and C-3PO. Superheroes like Spider-Man, Wonder Woman and Batman. There's the Shogun Warrior and many more, all at bare bones prices. Only $1.97 to $3.99. And wrapped candy of every kind to cheer any spirit. All at the favorite Halloween haunts, Woolworth and Woolco.
All right. So is there one last thing that you're like, I got one more thing here I want to try to get to, one more thing it's an arm's length that you kind of want to chat about for a minute?
Really, I wanted to end with the Star Killer for my collection. I see you have the Trivial Pursuit game behind you, which I do.
I do. I love the Trivial Pursuit game. Haven't played that in many a moons.
Same here.
This is
people are afraid to play.
Again, new stuff, but can't say no to cool new stuff.
Oh, that's impressive.
They call it a virgin cover because it doesn't have any of the logo stuff on the top or whatever. So beautiful variant, hard to find kind of stuff. Look into it on my travels. So my concierge service, let's get something for Loki, and they had that too. And I'm like, I just throw that out there. I it's not that I won't sell it. It's just the fact that we want to keep it through Star Wars Day. So yeah, a
Right.
few things, and a few things that I do enjoy as well. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's been great to kind of dive a little deeper with you on that. So what else do you
Mhm.
see?
And what's funny about that Trivial Pursuit game is the first game I played with it was with a bunch of my geek buddy, my former wife and her friends, where they're all geeks, but more in the Star Trek thing, but they still like everything. In fact, the one guy found the I think it was the Lando Calrissian uh, series by L. Neil Smith in a bookstore, but there were the British copies, and it's like, how much of a friend am I? If I hit them over the head just right, cold cock, and boom, go up to the. But we sat around, and they agreed, all of them against me,
Wow.
and who won?
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did.
Hmm.
Especially if it's the
Right.
original stuff. Like we had kids in church who were prequel babies and such.
Hmm.
And a couple of them were really into it, and they would try to play that trivial game with you, but it was
Hmm.
always a little bit bent towards the newer stuff. And I
Yeah.
had to be honest, whenever you lived on that, like you said, 77 to 85, pretty much,
Hmm.
I'm pretty good there. But you start
Right.
getting into anything beyond that. You read a lot more of the books and stuff like that than I did. And I have to be honest, I was
Hmm.
very distracted, right? I've talked about this in that 80s too. The other problem Star Wars had is that as it was coming down with George saying there's not going to be any more, everyone was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I'll go watch and get invested in Terminator and Back to the Future and Ghostbusters
Hmm.
and all this other cool stuff that there was to do and see. It didn't mean we hated Star Wars. There was also this
No.
other cool stuff. And then you get to Batman 89, and then you get to a
Oh.
comic book boom and Renaissance
Hmm.
and things. So, and that's not giving credit properly to the Miller books and the Watchmen and stuff
Right.
like that. But my point was,
Right.
it's all happening at the same time. But
Right.
Baron, it's incredible. It's incredible to hang out like
Oh,
this.
yeah. I enjoy spending time with you, Pops, really honestly. Two peers together like this, our
Mm.
quest and journey through, Star Wars and all the other fun stuff that we have out there. And more importantly, what we love. And of course, obviously, the people here who are watching us, I mean, we have to give all of them thanks because
Yes, indeed.
without them, we wouldn't be doing it. And obviously, they do have a love for this. And we got to keep those fires going and remind them, there is a Star Wars universe before the House of the Mouse. And there is a reason why we cherish it and hold it to our hearts. And this is why. I mean, it's not hatred or anger towards the House of the Mouse. We're not saying all of it stinks. There are, like I said, there are some good stuff out there. But there's a lot more disappointments, I hate to say. I wish that was not the case. I consider that stuff all apocrypha.
And I wish that we could get a resurgence of like, and this is my dream. People have asked, and I said, so the dream would be, I got so many people fired up on old Star Wars, however they want to define that. There's a run in stores and on eBay and whatever, and it becomes a trendy thing that everyone is kind of into it,
Right.
and it just
Mhm.
becomes a thing. And
Right.
then the ones that want to make money and the whatever, they'll realize maybe we should kind of bend and lean into that. For example,
Mhm.
is exactly what we're seeing with the Transformers and GI Joe comic books right now because they're
Right.
very good. It's a lot of fun. I'm terrible.
Mhm.
I'm the worst person you want to be next to because I go into the comic store. I went to the one, Baron, but all of the Transformers books, all of them, duplicates. Because then I go to someone like Mike who hasn't got a copy yet. I said, "Do you need a few
Right.
issues?" And we just literally went through some of the issues. Which one do you want? I'll sell them to you because I have so multiple copies. I'm just like because it is that good.
Yeah.
And now, hopefully, we'll continue to see those branch. They're doing two more Joe spinoffs. Obviously, Conan is going strong for the exact same reason, and that's what we
Right.
could see. We could see these IPs redirect. And I think to a lesser extent, we're seeing it with other ones. We'll see how Space Ghosts and Thundercats do because
Mhm.
they've kind of started as well and they've been very positive. And
Mhm.
there's a few other things. And even Disney has licensed their stuff out for their kids'
Right.
stuff with a lot
Mhm.
of high quality. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I've read it or know a lot about it, but I will say at least the covers do. When the
Mhm.
quality of the creators are not like they didn't turn the Hercules comic book into something else, right? It
Right.
looks pretty much like an adaptation. So people that are into that, so that's really my dream would be with something like Trek and Star Wars, is that we would
Mhm.
see it bend more into a better welcoming time for that Marvel run of all those great characters. You know what I mean? And we'll see a better legacy and coming together of all of this. And some things can't be fixed, but some things can. And I think it's this is the fun part of having these kind of conversations and hanging out and doing this stuff. So it's awesome.
Yeah, well, when we can get back to the folklore, the legend, the myth, because that's what George grabbed a lot of. And if you really take a look at all this classic stuff we've been talking about, and in one way or another intertwines in what someone else wrote, or Arthur, Robin Hood, even going into the Jomsvikingla and the Havermall, all this stuff, whether it's one form of legend or myth, and all meshed in Star Trek, Star Wars, all this, even Doctor Who. When you're dealing with trying to make a mythology, making a lore, making it mesh, making it one thing, and doing it for the heart instead of going out there and trying to placate and be a virtual signaling, that never works.
Right.
I want to know about this character. I want to care about this character. What's more about this character? We had that with EU. The first EU comic that didn't have any of the Star Wars cast, other than you saw a little flashback in there, was 16, when Valance was introduced. And it was a follow-up from the Han Solo when he was on Abaddon 3, I believe it was. And the Valance is looking for the guy who shot down the Death Star and was friends with droids because he hated droids. And he meets, and of course, the one that's on the planet is the Star Killer Kid.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's in there. And when you're saying about no Clone Wars, we touched it briefly with the first time we took a look at the prequel era, with Leia recounting a story that Bail Organa told her about Obi-Wan Kenobi in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was little touches there. But again, that was so ambiguous with the Obi-Wan, it could still happen.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff.
So,
well, folks, again, all the links will be there to connect to Baron and Mike, because he's a co-host on that show. So I want to make sure I give credit to the best places to spend time with Baron. And we didn't scratch the surface. I mean, he didn't reach on the one shelf. Like I said, the whole one shelf. He didn't. So he has to come back, and we'll have to do more of this.
Well,
for sure.
Well, I did technically do it for this one. But,
yeah, that's true.
That's about it. Yeah. But
we will definitely do more. And I think about doing this like once a quarter. Okay, not an all day thing for those of you reading too much into that. No, a show or something that could just be positive stuff. We could just pick something. Maybe we make Baron whittle down, these are the books he'd recommend, or for, those kinds of categories of things. And I think that's kind of a fun way to do things as well. So we might do shows like that, because I think that's a good way to kind of, again, let's fuel some of the positive. The negative will feed on its own. The negative responses, it's almost like it's easy. It's softballs on tees. Let's do some of the positive as well. And Baron, you've been such a great part of doing it today on this show. Thank you so much, my friend. I hope you have a good Star Wars Day as well, my friend.
Let's call it what it properly is. Orthodox Star Wars Day.
Orthodox.
I'm an So, I mean, I can celebrate too, but I know this is Orthodox, just like, like the Greeks have their Orthodox Christmas. So,
it's funny because I feel like, I'm sorry, I can't let it go, because I feel like we honor everything on the day it was created or was born. And then for this, though, we allowed a catchy phrase to become a meme and take away from it. And that's why I do it. I do it as sort of a way of taking a little bit of that back. I don't have a problem doing things on the 4th. I do things on the 4th. I usually watch a movie on the 4th. Last year I did a review. I didn't really get to a review this year on the 4th, but I'm okay with all that. So anyway, I guess it is.
And that's the one thing.
It's like it.
We can enjoy both of them, while most people don't even think about this one.
Good point. Very good point. All right, my brother. Thank you so much for that, folks. Sit back, enjoy some more Star Wars content. Thanks for being here with this, and hopefully you enjoy all these little commercials and stuff and hanging out with us. Take care, everybody. Till next time.
May the Force be with you. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't do that for that one. I get confused sometimes. But may the Force be with you.
TIE fighter attack! Sound battle alert!
It's Millennium Falcon. You have to put it together. And an Imperial TIE fighter. Batteries for each not included.
Fire laser! Secure the ship! Let's get out of here!
Ships and Han Solo action figure all sold separately.
He's on my tail! Hang on! Uh-oh! He hit an asteroid! Stop! Yeah!
Imperial TIE fighter, Millennium Falcon, and action figure all sold separately from Kenner's Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection.
You're watching Star Wars Day with Pops.
My favorite's always been Dark Empire. So I loved collecting those, and I don't know what happened to my original set. I don't remember whether they got lost in a move or whether someone lifted them, or I know I had them and I read through them. So these were used. There was nothing you could, write home about or get plated today or graded or anything like that. But the story is what really pulled me in, this idea that that Luke would look into what happened. Why did my father go over to the dark side? Why did Vader join the Emperor? And then kind of get pulled into this adventure where he turns on everybody and takes his father's place. It's that overshadowing you get in Return of the Jedi, take your father's place at my side. So getting to go back and collect those again, that's always great. I'm always looking for those. I'm looking for Hand of Thrawn. Usually there's 4 or 6 of these comics you can get, but yeah, I absolutely love the artwork. The people that worked on these comics are absolutely grade A, wonderful artists, and you don't get a lot of stuff like that today. You don't get the same thing. You don't get the same politics in it. You don't get the same feeling behind it. You just don't, and it shows. It really does.
From Kenner's Star Wars collection, each sold separately. Large-sized Darth Vader with his lightsaber. Princess Leia, champion of the rebel cause. With her defender, Luke Skywalker. You can swing him into action on his grappling hook. And load Chewbacca's laser crossbow. Star Wars large-size action figures. Up to 15 inches tall and ready for action. Large-size Darth Vader, Chewbacca, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, each sold separately from Kenner.
It's Star Wars radio-controlled R2-D2. 2 9-volt and 2C alkaline batteries not included. You can make R2-D2 move, beep, and flash his light by wireless radio control.
Hey, let me try.
You can make R2 move forward.
Look out, Dad!
Backward, turn and beep.
Hurry, turn, Dad!
Radio-controlled R2-D2 from the Star Wars collection by Kenner.
Somewhere in space, the most extraordinary creatures ever seen are pawns in a war between good and evil, a war between both sides of the Force, the strongest power in the universe. Use the Force, Luke. Feel the Force. Fight the battles. Live the adventure with Star Wars Return of the Jedi Collection, the biggest collection of vehicles, figures, and playsets in the galaxy, each sold separately, only from Kenner.
Grab control of a pod racer and hang on for the race of your life. You're Anakin Skywalker or Sebulba in a heart-pounding race for survival. Scream through Beggar's Canyon at 600. Better make that turn, because victory tastes a whole lot better than dirt. Have you experienced Star Wars? Pod Racer, each sold separately. It's your universe.